Hello, my name is Tricrow, and this is my first reading of Polaris by H.P. Lovecraft. Into the north window of my chamber glows the pole star with an uncanny light. All through the long hellish hours of blackness it shines there. And, in the autumn of the year, when the winds from the north curse and whine, the red-leaved trees of the swamp mutter things to one another. In the small hours of the morning, under the horned, waning moon, I sit by the casement and watch that star. Down from the heights reels the glistening Cassiopeia. As the hours wear on, when Charles Wayne lumbers up from behind the vapour-soaked swamp trees that sway in the night wind, just before dawn Arcturus winks ruddily from above the cemetery on the low hillock, and Coma Berenice shimmers weirdly afar off in the mysterious east. But the pole star leers down from the same place in the black vault, winking hideously like an insane watching eye, which strives to convey some strange message, yet recalls nothing save that it once had a message to convey. Sometimes, when it's cloudy, I can sleep. Well, I do remember the night of the great aurora, when over the swamp played the shocking coruscations of the daemon light. After the beams came clouds, and I slept. And under the horned waning moon I saw the city for the first time. Still and somnolent did it lie on a strange plateau, in a hollow betwixt strange peaks. Of ghastly marble were its walls and its towers, its columns, domes, and pavements. In the marble streets were marble pillars, the upper parts of which were carven into the images of grave bearded men. The air was warm and stirred not, and the overhead, scarce 10 degrees from the zenith, glowed that watching pole star. Long did I gaze on that city, but the day came not when the red Aldebaran, which blinked low in the sky, but never set, had crawled a quarter of the way around the horizon. I saw light and the motion in the houses and the streets, forms strangely robed but at once noble and familiar, walked around under the horned waning moon. Men talked wisdom in a tongue I understood, although it was unlike any language I had ever known. And when the red Aldebaran had crawled more than halfway across the horizon, there were again darkness and silence. When I awaked, I was not as I had been. Upon my memory was graven the vision of a city, and within my soul had arisen another, and a vague recollection of whose nature I was not then certain. Thereafter, on cloudy nights when I could sleep, I saw the city often, sometimes under that horned waning moon, and sometimes under the hot yellow rays of the sun, which did not set, but wheeled low around the horizon, and on the clear nights the pole star leered as never before. Gradually, I came to wonder what might be my place in that city, on the strange plateau betwixt the strange peaks. At first content to view the scene as an all-observant, uncorporeal presence, I now desire to define my relation to it, and speak my mind amongst the grave men who conversed each day in the public squares. I said to myself, this is no dream, for by what means can I prove the greater reality of the other life in the house of stone and brick, south of the sinister swamp in the cemetery on the low hillock, where the pole star peers into my north window each night? On one night, as I listened to the discourse in the large square, containing many statues, I felt a change, and perceived that I had at last a bodily form. Nor was I a stranger to the streets of Olafaux, which lies on the plateau of Sarkis between the peaks of Norton and Cadiphonic. It was my friend Alos who spoke, and his speech was one that pleased my soul, for it was a speech of a true man and a patriot. That night had come the news of Dicos' fall and the advance of the Anutos, squat, hellish yellow fiends who 5 years ago had appeared out of the unknown west to ravage the confines of our kingdom. And finally, to besiege our towns, having taken the fortified places of the foot of the mountains, their way now laid open to the plateau, unless every citizen could resist with the strength of 10 men, for the squat creatures were mighty in the arts of war, and knew not the scruples of honour which held back our tall grey-eyed men of Lamar from ruthless conquest. Alos, my friend, was commander of all the forces on the plateau. and in him lay the last hope of our country. On this occasion he spoke of the perils to be faced, and exhorted the men of Olafo, bravest of the Lomarians, to sustain the tradition of their ancestors, who, when forced to move southward from Zobna before the advance of the great ice sheets, even as our descendants must some day flee from the land of Lamar, valiantly and victoriously swept aside the hairy, long-armed cannibal Gnopkes that stood in their way. To me, Alos denied a warrior's part, for I was feeble and given to a strange fainting when subject to stress and hardships. But my eyes were the keenest in the city, despite the long hours I gave each day to study the narcotic manuscripts and the wisdom of the Zobnarian fathers. So my friend, desiring not to doom me to inaction, and rewarded me with that duty which was second to nothing of importance, to the watchtower of Thapnin. He sent me there to serve as the eyes of our army. Should the Inatos attempt to gain the citadel by the narrow pass beyond the peaks of Norton, and thereby surprise the garrison, I was to give the signal of fire, which would warn the waiting soldiers, and save the town from imminent disaster. Alone I mounted that tower, for every man of stout body was needed in the passes below. My brain was sore dazed with excitement, but my purpose was firm, for I loved my native land of Lamar, and the marble streets of Olafo, that lies betwixt the peaks of Norton and Cadifodec. But, as I stood in the tower's topmost chamber, I beheld the horned waning moon, red and sinister, quivering through the vapours that hovered over the distant valley of Banoff, and though an opening in the roof glistened, the pale pole star fluttered as if alive and leering like a fiend and tempter. Methought its spirits whispered evil counsel, soothing me to traitorous somnolence with a damnable rhythmic promise. Slumber, watcher, till the spheres 26,000 years have revolved, and I return to the spot where I now burn. Other stars anon shall rise to the axis of the skies, stars that soothe and stars that bless with the sweet forgetfulness. Only when my round is o'er shall the past disturb thy door. Vainly did I struggle with my drowsiness, seeking to connect these strange words with some lore of the sky which I had learned from Natonic manuscripts. My head, heavy and reeling, drooped to my breast, and when I next looked up, it was a dream, with the pole star grinning at me through a window from over the horrible swaying trees of the dream swamp. And I am still dreaming. In my shame and despair I sometimes scream frantically, begging the dream creatures around me to waken me ere the Inatos steal up the pass behind the peak Norton and take the citadel by surprise. But these creatures are daemons, for they laugh at me. They tell me I'm not dreaming. They mock me whilst I sleep, and whilst the squat yellow foe may be creeping silently upon us. I have failed in my duty, and betrayed the marble city of Olafo. I have proven false to Alos, my friend, my commander, but still these shadows of my dreams deride me. They say there is no land of Lamar, save my nocturnal imaginings, that those realms where the pole star shines high and the red Aldebaran crawls low across the horizon, there has been naught save ice and snow for thousands of years, and never a man save squat yellow creatures, lighted by the cold, whom they call Eskimos. And I arrive in my guilty agony, frantic to save the city, whose peril every moment grows, and vainly striving to shake off this unnatural dream of a house of stone and brick, south of the sinister swamp and a cemetery on the low hillock. The pole star, evil and monstrous, leers down from the black vault, winking hideously like an insane watching eye which strives to convey some strange message, yet recalls nothing save that it once had a message to convey.